Hello everybody, welcome to That's Football. Newcastle 4, Brighton 1, and Newcastle, the Toon army, have basically confirmed Champions League football. You know, what was it? 18 months ago, Newcastle, a lot of people were relegating them. Yes, they got the takeover. Yes, Eddie Howe came in, but what a position to be in. This, the very next season, from the start of the season to now, they thoroughly deserve top four. We can talk about why it's happened, but ultimately, they deserve top four. Based on pure football, we mentioned last night, based on pure football, Man City are the best team in the world. So therefore, based on pure football, Newcastle, I don't mean like their football's pure, I'm just saying on the football side of things, Newcastle comprehensively deserve top four this season. I think they started the season magnificently. They played some fantastic football. And yeah, after the World Cup, they had to grind it out for a couple of months, but then they finished the season with some fantastic football as well. Eddie Howe's done a momentous job there. I mean, look, we all know Saudi Arabia are probably richer than Abu Dhabi, and the path for Newcastle is probably Man City's path, but you could argue that I forget what happened in the first 18 months with Man City under Abu Dhabi, but Newcastle just seemed to be a little bit ahead of schedule. From relegation contenders to top four in the first full season. There's no Robinho in there. They've not spent that. They've spent the money really well. Isaac's been a great signing. Gameres, Botman. You can say they haven't spent money. They have spent money. They've spent it right at their level, and I think that's what you've got to do. Eddie Howe was the right manager to bring in. The signings they've brought in are the right players to bring in. The interesting thing for Newcastle is, and they haven't got top four yet. Of course they haven't. But Leicester at home on Monday. If you can do that to Brighton, Leicester becomes more of a cup final. You've got 72 points. You can't be caught. You've got top four. That's the aim for Newcastle. And as I've said before, I don't think they'll leave the top four. Once they're in there, the wealth they've got, if they keep making the decisions, and that's the thing. I think Man City in the early days probably made a few mistakes. Newcastle don't seem to be making any mistakes. They seem to be slightly ahead of schedule. And then the interesting thing for Newcastle is, what do you do next? Because people are talking about Ronaldo, they're talking about Neymar. That still might feel far-fetched to Newcastle fans, but it is going to be your reality soon. I think you've built a team that's ahead of schedule to get you top four. You've now got to build a team that you're in the Champions League to compete for the Champions League and compete for the title. Is that Newcastle team good enough to compete for the Champions League and the title? No. It's got a very distinct feeling of a team that is overachieving and working ridiculously hard. I feel they've overachieved. I think that's why it's been a superb season for Newcastle, because I think they have overachieved. You wouldn't put that squad and that team in the top four if Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal and Man City perform to the level they're expected to. You'd put Newcastle sixth, but they're third. And that's because Liverpool have had a bad season, Chelsea have had a bad season, and Man United have been a bit, I think Man United have been good, to be fair. They've been fighting it out. So Newcastle are punching a little bit. Their next step, they're going to have to, what I'm trying to say is, if they want to go to the next step, and the next step is winning things, they've got to buy. And ultimately, I don't want to put a downer on it, because I think Eddie Howe and a few of those players have just been brilliant. I've just seen Dan Burn talking there. Dan Burn's not going to be a starter for Newcastle next season. Surely not. I think he'll be a bench player, because that's the progress you've got to take. If you want to be successful, you've got to be ruthless. Pep went through 3 right-backs to find the one he wanted. It's the way Newcastle will be, and it's the way they have to be. It's the blueprint to success. The next thing for Newcastle, if they get this Champions League, which they should do now, is what do they do this summer? Do they go, you know what, we're ahead of schedule, let's stick with these players next year and let them enjoy the adventure? Or do they go, we might be ahead of schedule, but we're not going to waste this opportunity. We've got to be in the Champions League next year, so we've got to get top four. We want to compete in the Champions League as well. So I think that's what they have to do. I don't think you can go, you know what, we're ahead of schedule, let's stick to the players that got us here, because they might not be able to cover Champions League football and top four, and that's the challenge Newcastle have got. So I expect big things for Newcastle. They're rich, they're super wealthy, and they're where they need to be now to bring in the players they want. And I don't think they go and get Kylian Mbappe. I don't think they can do that yet. But they probably can go and get players that are very, very, very good players that wouldn't have looked at them twice last summer. And that's going to be the interesting thing. And as I say, they fully deserve it. They've been superb this season. And also, I think we need to look. Man United are going through something at the moment where they could end up with a very similar ownership model. So, you know, I'm at the rock face with it. I understand it. I've said it. Many other people have said it. Now, Newcastle and Man City, it's just a cheat code, and it is. But it's also a jealousy code for everybody else. Everyone's jealous of it because they want that blueprint of success because it's very successful. This is the way football's going now. I think Man City and Newcastle and United, if they get it, and there will be others, Chelsea have got it in a way, it's becoming the norm now. It's not one or even two clubs. It's going to become 3, 4, 5, and then it's just going to become the norm. This is the way football's going. The super wealthy are going to dominate football, like it always has been, really. But look, Newcastle have been the best team tonight, and they deserve top 4. And I've spoken to a lot of Newcastle fans over the season doing the Talk Sport show, driving home from games on a Saturday, and they've just loved it. They've enjoyed it. They've not labelled it. They've not put any expectation on it. They've just enjoyed the journey because very recently they were in a relegation battle. That's going to change as well. Just as much as you can look at that Newcastle side and say in 3 years I think they'll be winning the league, but it won't be Eddie Howe in charge, it won't be Dan Burn, and it won't be Callum Wilson, and it won't be Willock, and it won't be Longstaff. It will be, you know, superstars. That's probably realistic. Might not definitely happen, but it's probably realistic. But just like that, Newcastle fans next year and the year after, they'll do well to cling on to the whole we're just enjoying the journey, because with success comes expectation. That's what being a big club's all about. That's why Newcastle didn't win that title from Man United and bottled that 12-point lead under Keegan. That's why Newcastle haven't won a trophy in decades, because that's not what they are as a football club. Well, I think you are about to be that, and when you do become that, it will make you very, you know, your expectations will go up, and you will enjoy the ride, but you'll expect success as well along that ride as success comes in. And it's going to be very intriguing to see Newcastle, because I said it, as soon as they got the money, once they get Champions League football, they're not going to go. And that's bad news for Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, because I believe now there are 2 spots gone in the top 4 at Manchester United, in the Premier League. Man City and Newcastle, the way they are run, and they are run very well, and they have wealth, I don't see them putting themselves in a situation where they jeopardise top 4. Man City came close a couple of times, to be fair. They nearly fell out of the top 4, but, you know, it's a big achievement for Newcastle. As for Brighton, very quick word on Brighton. They're a bit yo-yo-y at the end of this season. They can pull off brilliant results against United and Arsenal and look like they can beat anybody, and then they can play against Everton and, you know, somehow get battered. Tonight, Newcastle were a lot better than them, and they got battered as well. So Brighton have had a fantastic season, but yeah, maybe they're just running out of gas a little bit now. But it's Newcastle's night, and top 4 is on download for them. Champions League football is on download for them, and they better get used to it, because I think it's going to be happening a lot more over future years, and there could be big trophies heading their way. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video, get your comments in below, and please do subscribe.